All right, imagine a man. Or actually, let's say a woman. Nope, that's not quite right either. Okay, here's what I mean. Picture someone who was born male, but later had their gender changed by others, and then eventually that person would become a man again. Anyway, let me just tell you the whole story. By the end of this video, I bet you'll be shocked. And when you are, drop your thoughts in the comments below. Also, because this video could easily get restricted, don't forget to like and comment. That way, if something does happen, at least we tried to soften the blow a little. Alright, enjoy watching. So you know the person we now call David Reimer? Well, he was actually born Bruce. You'll see why I'm saying this as the story goes on. He had an identical twin brother named Brian Reimer, and they were both born in Canada back in 1965. The twins were the first kids of a young couple, Janet and Ron Reimer. At first, both twins seemed totally healthy, but when they were about 8 months old, their parents noticed they were having trouble peeing, so they took them to the doctor. That's when both babies were diagnosed with phimosis. Basically, that means the opening at the tip of their foreskin was too narrow, so they couldn't retract it. In other words, that's why they were struggling to pee. The doctor suggested circumcision as a solution for both boys. At first, their mom, Janet, was a bit hesitant, but in the end, both parents agreed. Thinking about their son's health, they decided Bruce would get the surgery first. But instead of the usual method, the doctor chose to use something called an electrocautery device. It's still used today. This tool cuts and seals tissue using heat, which is supposed to help prevent bleeding, but something went horribly wrong. During the procedure, the doctor accidentally burned almost all of Bruce's organ. The damage was so bad it couldn't be repaired. Brian, the other twin, was luckier. After seeing what happened to Bruce, their parents refused to let Brian have the same surgery. Brian's condition actually cleared up on its own eventually, but Bruce was left with devastating injuries. While Bruce's parents desperately looked for answers, they happened to catch a TV segment featuring John Money, a psychologist famous for his work on gender. Back then, Money was considered one of the top gender researchers in the US. This gave Bruce's mom, Janet, a bit of hope. She wrote a long letter to Dr. Money describing the awful accident her son had suffered. The doctor must have found the situation pretty unusual because the mother got a response to her letter really quickly. Just a few weeks later, they were on their way to see psychologist John Money at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. Now, Money believed that gender identity was all about how you were raised, not how you were born. In his view, gender was a social construct, and anyone could be taught to identify as either male or female, no matter their biological sex. According to him, people weren't born knowing their gender, they learned it from their environment. He also thought that until about age 2, children were basically gender neutral. He called this window the gender gate, a short period where parents could supposedly shape their child's gender through behavior. It's important to point out that this idea was still just a theory. There was no solid proof behind it. Honestly, things weren't looking too promising. Based on this theory, Money made a pretty radical suggestion. Bruce should have surgery to change his gender. That meant removing what was left of Bruce's damaged genitals and replacing them with a prosthetic female organ. Bruce would then be raised as a girl, and he'd never be told about his past. The plan sounded risky and even a bit dark, but after thinking it over, the family agreed to go through with it. They were just parents trying to do what they thought was best for their child, but neither of them had any idea what was actually about to happen. Most importantly, Bruce himself had no say in the matter. The forced transition started just before Bruce's second birthday in 9 months. While the family was going through a nightmare, for Dr. Money, it was an unbelievable opportunity. This surgery gave him the perfect case study to test his gendergate theory on real people. The operation was considered a success. Afterward, on Money's advice, Bruce's name was changed to Brenda. From then on, Bruce would live as Brenda Reimer. Alongside the surgery, Brenda was also given estrogen supplements to help her body become more feminine. Throughout all these years, the Reimer family kept visiting Dr. Money's office every year. That way, Money could observe how Brenda grew up as a girl, while her twin brother Brian grew up as a boy. This radical experiment soon became known as the John/Joan case in medical circles. For Dr. Money, these twins were the perfect research subjects. He noted that Brenda was much better behaved than her brother Brian. He also described Brenda as stubborn and dominant, traits he didn't want to label as masculine since that would challenge his own theory. In 1975, when the twins turned 9, Money published his findings in a book called Sexual Signatures. He called the forced transition from Bruce to Brenda a total success. He even pointed out that Brenda preferred wearing dresses over pants. She liked wearing hair ribbons, bracelets, and frilly blouses. Brenda loved being her dad's little sweetheart. All through her childhood, she was stubborn and shared an energetic side with her twin brother. That made her kind of a tomboy, but still you could say she was a girl, or at least that's what everyone thought. But here's the big question. Did Brenda actually choose any of this? Or was it all forced on her, pushed into her subconscious? I think you probably know where this is going. The truth started to reveal itself as she got older. Nothing was as perfect as psychologist Money made it sound. Year after year, Brenda felt there was something off about herself. She just couldn't put her finger on what it was. Eventually, these feelings turned into real psychological struggles. Inevitably, those struggles started showing up at school too. Brenda looked like a girl, sure, but her movements and attitude were boyish. Kids at school started teasing her because of the way she walked and the sound of her voice. It turned into bullying, and it really got to her when her parents noticed they didn't know what to do, so they asked other doctors for help. Eventually, with some advice, they decided it was finally time to tell their kids the truth when the twins hit puberty. In 1980, right before a big appointment, their dad, Ron Reimer, took Brenda and her brother out to a restaurant. There, he told them everything. And just like that, the secret was out. Of course, after dropping that bombshell, it was time for another visit to the psychologist. When Brenda heard the truth, everything suddenly made sense. She said, "I'm not a freak. I'm not crazy." For the first time, she could finally understand herself, but after this confession, even more painful truths started coming out. Those visits to Dr. Money's office, completely traumatic. Brenda, still new to her identity, was shown images of naked adults to strengthen her female identity. Dr. Money also pressured her to go through a series of surgeries to make her more feminine. Once all this came to light, the family was devastated. The secret tore them apart. Brenda's dad turned to alcohol and her mum attempted suicide. Her twin brother, Brian, later struggled with the addiction and got into trouble with the law. Their mum, Janet, said she always felt uncomfortable about Brenda's forced girl identity. She remembered how the first time she put a dress on Brenda, Brenda tore it off in anger. There were doubts along the way, but Janet said, "I just couldn't face being wrong. I didn't have the strength." After learning the truth, Brenda decided to live as her true self, a boy. She took the name David. Finally, she could make her own decisions. David went through several surgeries to reverse what had been done without his consent, and started living as himself again. Among all this, he went through a double mastectomy to remove the breasts that had developed after years of estrogen therapy. Then, a new artificial version of his original sex organ was constructed to replace the one created during his earlier surgery. Naturally, this time, he started taking testosterone supplements. In short, he was living a new nightmare just to try and undo his old ones, none of which had ever really been his choice. After a while, the physical stress started to mess with his mental health. What he went through would have been heavy for anyone, and it was just too much for David. In his early 20s, he attempted suicide twice. Thankfully, he survived, but he fell into a deep depression that lasted for years. But Caesar, that's David's new name, was tough. Despite everything he'd been through, he found love and even got married to a woman named Jane. At least part of his life finally started to go the way he wanted. His family life wasn't bad either, and honestly, that was what mattered most to him. It was his own choice. Things were going well, and the years kept rolling by. He and Jane were about to celebrate 14 years together. David became a stepdad to Jane's 3 kids. Since having biological children wasn't possible for him, he dedicated himself to those kids, doing things like camping, fishing, collecting antiques and old coins. He found his ways to hold on to life, and honestly, these were his happiest, most colorful times. But deep down, there was always something missing. What bothered him most was not being able to help others who might go through what he did. He thought maybe by speaking out, he could keep doctors from making the same decisions for other kids. So he agreed to work with a sexologist named Milton Diamond. Diamond had criticized Dr. Money's old theories, saying there was no real proof that gender identity could just be taught or learned. Together, they worked hard to challenge those ideas. The first thing they talked about publicly was all the pain David went through as a child. Their story got a ton of attention and sparked a big reaction in society. Even though all this success made him feel a bit better, David could never fully get over his past. He couldn't close the door on those dark memories. Remember, David had a twin brother, the one he hoped would support him most, but who always seemed distant and absent. Tragically, in 2002, his brother died from an antidepressant overdose. That's also why I haven't really talked about him much. He just wasn't around. But whether it was a twin thing or just a sibling bond, David fell into another deep depression. Just as he was starting to find himself helping others and seeing a little hope at the end of the tunnel, he sank back down all over again. His mind was already a mess, and losing his brother just completely broke him. And honestly, you can't help but wonder, what else could life possibly throw at someone? Well, after all that, David lost his job too. So now he's left with no money, no work, and a messed up head. And just when you think things couldn't get worse, his wife tells him she wants a divorce. At this point, you'd expect even a stone to crack under the pressure. David completely lost hope that things would ever get better. 2 years after his brother was gone, in May 2004, David decided to end his own life. He was only 38 years old. He came into this world as a boy, was forced to live as a girl, and then, by his own choice, transitioned back to being a man. He might have even regretted that. He was raised as a girl, but deep down he always felt like a boy. It's like he was trapped between two worlds, with every path slowly closing off. If I had to sum up this life in one sentence, Bruce was born, Brenda grew up, David died. Honestly, I don't even know what to say. So I'll leave that up to you. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, just remember, I do all the work on this channel by myself, and your likes and comments are what keep me going, and I'll see you next time. I am Whisper Files. Take care until the next video. Thanks for watching. See you.